So, Sunday, February 2nd, about 4 p.m., very important opinion piece in the New York Times today, written by a guy named Ezra Klein, a very well-respected journalist, reporter, commentator. And it's about Donald Trump and, on the chance that most people don't subscribe to the New York Times, I'm going to read this to you. It's called Don't Believe Him. And essentially its argument is that Donald Trump is going to say a lot of things about the kind of power that he has in hopes that if he says it enough, that people will start to believe him. So Ezra Klein is arguing our job is to not believe him. It starts off as follows. If you want to understand the first few weeks of the second Trump administration, you should listen to what Steve Bannon told PBS's Frontline in 2019. He said the opposition party is the media, and the media can only, because they're dumb and lazy, they can only focus on one thing at a time. All we have to do is flood the zone. Every day we hit them with three things, they'll bite on one, and we'll get all of our other stuff done. Bang, bang, bang. These guys will never be able to recover, but we've got to start with muzzle velocity. Interesting metaphor. So it's got to start and it's got to hammer and it's got to, and the reporter interviewing him said, what was that word? And he said muzzle velocity. Bannon's insight here is real. Focus is the fundamental source of democracy. It is particularly the substance of opposition. People largely learn of what the government is doing through the media, be it mainstream media or social media. If you overwhelm the media, if you give it too many places it needs to look all at once, if you keep it moving from one thing to the next, no coherent opposition can emerge. It is hard to even think coherently. That accurately describes the last 2 weeks. Donald Trump's first 2 weeks in the White House have followed Bannon's strategy like a script. The flood is the point. The overwhelm is the point. The message wasn't in any one executive order or announcement. It was in the cumulative effect of all of them. The sense that this is Trump's country now. This is his government now. It follows his will. It does what he wants. If Trump tells the state to stop spending money, the money stops. If he says birthright citizenship is over, it's over. Or so he wants you to think. In Trump's first term, we were told, don't normalize him. In his second, the task is different. Don't believe him. Trump knows the power of marketing. If you make people believe something is true, you make it likelier that it becomes true. Trump clawed his way back to great wealth by playing a fearsome billionaire on TV. He remade himself as a winner by refusing to admit he had ever lost. The American presidency is a limited office, but Trump never wanted to be president, at least not as defined in Article 2 of the Constitution. He has always wanted to be king. His plan this time is first to play king on TV. If we believe he is already king, we will be likelier to let him govern as a king. Don't believe him. Trump has real powers, but they are the powers of the presidency. The pardon power is vast and unrestricted, so he could pardon the January 6 rioters. Federal security protection is under the discretion of the executive branch, and so he could remove it from Anthony Fauci and Mike Pompeo and John Bolton and Mark Milley and even Brian Hook, a largely unknown State Department official under threat from Iran, who donated time to Trump's transition team. It was an act of astonishing cruelty and callousness from a man who nearly died by an assassin's bullet. As much as anything ever has been, this, to the author, was an X-ray of the smallness of Trump's soul. But it was also an act that was within his power. But the president cannot rewrite the Constitution. Within days, the birthright citizenship order was frozen by a judge, a Reagan appointee who told Trump's lawyers, quote, I have difficulty understanding how a member of the bar would state unequivocally that this is a constitutional order. It just boggles my mind, close quote. A judge froze the spending freeze before it was even scheduled to go into effect. And shortly thereafter, the Trump administration rescinded the order, in part to avoid the court case. What Bannon wanted, what the Trump administration wants, is to keep everything moving fast. Remember, muzzle velocity. If you're always consumed by the next outrage, you can't look closely at the last one. The impression of Trump's power remains. The fact that he keeps stepping on rakes is missed. The projection of strength obscures the reality of weakness. Don't believe him. You could see this a few ways. Is Trump playing a part, making a bet, or triggering a crisis? Those are the options. I'm not certain he knows the answer. Trump has always been an improviser, but if you take it as calculated, here is the calculation. Perhaps this Supreme Court, stocked with his appointees, gives him power no peacetime president has ever possessed. Perhaps all of this becomes legal now that he has asserted its legality. It's not impossible to imagine that bet paying off. Yeah, but Trump's odds are bad. So what if the bet fails and his arrogations of power are soundly rejected by the courts? Then comes the question of constitutional crisis, and I've been asking people about this for a couple of weeks. Does he ignore the court's rulings? To do that would be to attempt a coup. I wonder if they have the stomach for it. The withdrawal of the Office of Management and Budget's order to freeze spending suggests they don't. Bravado aside, Trump's political capital is thin. Both in his first and second terms, he has entered office with approval ratings below that of any president in the modern era. Gallup has Trump's approval rating at 47%, 10 points below Joe Biden's in January of 2021. The reason Trump is doing all of this through executive orders rather than submitting these same directives as legislation, there is a reason Trump is doing all of this through executive orders rather than submitting these same directives as legislation to pass through Congress. A more powerful executive could persuade Congress to eliminate the spending he opposes or reform the civil service to give himself the powers of hiring and firing that he seeks. To write these changes into legislation would make them more durable and allow him to argue their merits in a more strategic way. Even if Trump's aim is to bring the civil service to heel, to rid it of his opponents and turn it to his own ends, he would be better off arguing that he is simply trying to bring the high-performance management culture of Silicon Valley to the federal government. You never want a power grab to look like a power grab. But Republicans only have a 3-seat edge in the House for now, and a 53-seat majority in the Senate. That's about to be a 1-seat margin in the House. Trump has done nothing to reach out to Democrats. If Trump tried to pass this agenda as legislation, it would most likely fail in the House, and it would certainly die before the filibuster in the Senate. And that would make Trump look weak. Trump does not like to look weak. He remembers John McCain humiliating him in his first term by casting the deciding vote against the Obamacare repeal. That is the tension at the heart of Trump's whole strategy. Trump is acting like a king because he is too weak to govern like a president. He is trying to substitute perception for reality. He is hoping that perception then becomes reality. That can only happen if we believe him. The flurry of activity is meant to suggest the existence of a plan. The Trump team wants it known that they're ready this time. They will control events rather than be controlled by them. The closer you look, however, the less true that seems. They are scrambling and flailing already. They are leaking against one another already. We've learned already that the OMB directive was drafted, reportedly, without the insight or input or oversight of key Trump officials. Quote, it didn't go through the proper approval process, unquote, an administrative official told the Washington Post. For this to be the process and product of a signature initiative in the second week of a president's second term is embarrassing. But it's not just the OMB directive. The Trump administration is waging an immediate war on the bureaucracy, trying to replace the deep state it believes hampered him in his first term. A big part of this project seems to have been outsourced to Elon Musk, who is bringing the tactics he used at Twitter to the federal government. Twitter then went on to lose 75% of its value. He has longtime aides at the Office of Personnel Management, and the emails sent to nearly all federal employees even reused the subject line of the email he sent to Twitter employees. A fork in the road. Musk wants us to know that was him. The email offers millions of civil servants a backdoor buyout. Agree to resign, and in theory at least, you can collect your paycheck and benefits until the end of September without doing any work. The Department of Governmental Efficiency, DOGE, account on X described it this way: take the vacation you always wanted, or just watch movies and chill while receiving your full government pay and benefits. The Washington Post reported that the email blindsided many in the Trump administration who normally have consulted on a notice like that. Ezra Klein suspects that Musk thinks the federal workforce as a huge mass of woke ideologues, but most federal workers have very little to do with politics. About 16% of the federal workforce is in healthcare. These are, for instance, nurses and doctors who work for the VA. How many of them does Musk want to lose? What plans does the VA have for attracting and training their replacements? How quickly can he do it? The Social Security Administration has more than 59,000 employees. Does Musk know which ones are essential to operations and unusually difficult to replace? One likely outcome of this scheme is that a lot of talented people who work in non-political jobs and could make more elsewhere take the lengthy vacation and leave government services in tatters. Twitter worked poorly after Musk's takeover. It's a shit product now, with more frequent outages and bugs, but its outages are not a national scandal. When VA healthcare degrades, it is. To have sprung this attack on the civil service so loudly and publicly and brazenly is to be assured of the blame if anything goes wrong. What Trump wants you to see in all of this activity is command. What is really in all of this activity is chaos. They do not have some secret reservoir of focus and attention that the rest of us do not. They have convinced themselves that speed and force is a strategy unto itself. That is, in a sense, a replacement for real strategy. Don't believe them. Trump's 79 years old, man. Give me a break. I had a conversation a couple of months ago with someone who knows how the federal government works about as well as anyone alive. I asked him what would worry him most if he saw Trump doing it. What he told me is that he would worry most if Trump went slowly, if he began his term by doing things that made him more popular and made his opposition weaker and more confused, if he tried to build strength for the midterms while slowly expanding his powers and chipping away at the deep state where it was weakest. But he didn't. And so the opposition to Trump, which seemed so listless after the election, is finally beginning to rouse itself. The subreddit for federal employees, where one of the top posts read, "This non-buyout really seems to have backfired. I'll be honest, before that email went out, I was looking for any way to get out of this fresh hell. But now I am fired up to make these goons as frustrated as possible." As I write this, it's been upvoted more than 39,000 times, and civil servant after civil servant is echoing the initial sentiment. In Iowa this week, Democrats flipped the state Senate seat in a district that Trump won easily in 2024. The attempted spending freeze gave Democrats their voice back as they zeroed in on popular programs Trump had imperiled. Trump isn't building support, he's losing it. He isn't fracturing his opposition, he's uniting it. This is the weakness of the strategy that Bannon proposed and that Trump is following. It is a strategy that forces them into overreach. To keep the zone flooded, they have to keep acting, keep moving, keep creating new cycles of outrage and fear. You overwhelm yourself, and there's only so much you can do through executive orders. Soon enough, you have to go beyond what you can actually do. And when you do that, you either trigger a constitutional crisis or you reveal your own weakness. Trump may not see his own fork in the road coming. He may believe he has the power he is claiming. That would be a mistake on his part, a self-deception that could doom his presidency. But the real threat is if he persuades the rest of us to believe he has the power he does not have. The first 2 weeks of Trump's presidency have not shown his strength. He is trying to overwhelm all of us. He's trying to keep us off balance. He's trying to persuade us of something that isn't true. Don't believe him. Again, that was from Ezra Klein, an opinion piece in today's New York Times, Sunday, February 2nd. Please click on the link in the link tree in my bio and subscribe to my YouTube page. It's free. TikTok is still going away in 2 months, and even if it doesn't, it's going to suck. So thanks, everybody.